Welcome to The Better Life with Dr. Mary Ann Pinkston. Join Dr. Pinkston today as she teaches you how an integrative approach to health, combining holistic and contemporary medical information, can lead you to the better life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Mary Ann Pinkston.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston. I'm Dr. Mary Ann Pinkston. And as always, want to bring you more integrative style medical education and issues and topics that I think are really hot right now. And one thing that I think is set aside quite often is the issue of chronic pain. But not just chronic pain, but disabilities with chronic pain. I think most people out there who have disabilities, and I think the number that I read from our lovely guest today is about 61 million people out there are inflicted with chronic pain and disabilities because of it, and 1 in 4 generally will report that they have undermet needs and have limited accessibility and reduced ability to get assistance. And as most people know, I have rheumatoid arthritis and chronic pain, and I would stand in that 61 million and agree highly that physicians and clinics and society in general are not really meeting the needs of folks. So I have a fantastic guest today, Chanda Hinton, and she is up in Colorado, and she is founder of the Chanda Center for Health, and a remarkable lady. She did win, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chanda, but top 25 most powerful women in business in 2020 in Colorado. So, you know, she is moving and grooving and doing wonderful things. Welcome in. It is such an honor to have you.
Thank you so much. I am extremely honored to be here as well, and I'm excited for our conversation. I think conversation around disability and wellness is something that's not discussed enough, so I'm so happy to spend this time with you and have a great conversation.
Well, I agree highly, and so this is where we're going to focus on today. And I think that, you know, honestly, you have a very, very interesting story. So please share that with us and let us know kind of how you came to do what you do.
Absolutely. So when I was 9 years old, I was accidentally shot in the back of the neck between C5, C6, and that severed my spinal cord. And so at age 9, I was thrust into the medical model with the reality that I would be a quad with very limited to no function, but basically below the armpits down. Obviously, I still have movement to my arms. My hands are a little bit not. But with that, it was an interesting time as a little 9-year-old to come to terms with what that all meant. As of today, which I'll kind of step back to that, but as of today, you know, I am a woman that is living independently. I drive my own self to work. I have a service dog that helps me pick up my keys that I drop every day. And I am the senior executive director of a health clinic that stems from that actual injury. And so to back up a little bit to that injury is that most of the time when I, was first injured, it was like being thrown into a medical model where it was very much, okay, Chanda, now that you're paralyzed, here's your wheelchair. This is how you're going to get around. And then here are all the medications that you'll utilize to address your secondary conditions, all the way from pain, bladder, bowel, spasticity, like you name it, right? And so the unfortunate part was that there wasn't any other options. It was just kind of like, this is what you get. This is your chair. Here's your medication. And then over time, it seemed as though those secondary conditions that were being addressed by medication, like new ones would pop up, like, oh, that's another one. And here's the next medication. And so when I turned 21, I started having this like extreme severe chronic pain. I went to my physician and that's the moment where, oh, that's another secondary condition that comes with living with that here. And at that time, it was 2003. Mm-hmm. It was the peak of the opioid epidemic. So I was given a Percocet and, being naive and granted wanting to trust my physician, I took that as an opportunity just to like, okay, I guess it's the next part of the evolution. And so I started taking Percocet, but it obviously didn't turn out the way that had anticipated. But I think it turned out in the way that it should have, because now we get to sit on this podcast today and have a much deeper conversation. So what happened from that, I basically was up to 4 Percocets a day to address that chronic pain, along with all of the other medication I was already on and not moving my body. So eventually I became bedbound. I was down to 59 pounds. I had to use medical intervention to basically save my life. So it was in that moment, I didn't think about it. But, as I progressed in my career and aged with my disability, what was really kind of interesting to me is that I used the medical model to save my life when I was shot. I overutilized the medical model to then use the medical model again as an intervention to save my life. So I was like, this is so interesting. And obviously, it did save my life. But the key point, which I'll eventually stop talking and go back to you.
You're fine.
The key point that was so critical was that when the second round, being hospitalized, from that moment, I was hospitalized, being fed intravenously. I was being fed they put in a feeding tube. So they were in full, we got to save Chanda's life with medical intervention because of that overutilization, right? And so when they saved my life, they said, okay, go back and do what you were doing. And I'm just like, what? I know, right?
Right.
I'm like, I know rocket science, but this is not rocket science.
This is not working, obviously. Right.
So I just said to my physician, who was really, really, and there were 2 different physicians because I lived in Denver at the time that I was put on that, the narcotic. I went back to my family physician during that time that I needed that medical intervention to save my life. And so he said, well, let's just go back and do what we were doing. And I looked at him and I said, you know me so well from a little girl. You know that that's the wrong decision to make. He's like, well, what else would you propose? And my sister, who had been a yoga instructor, said, well, why don't we give Chanda's body what it deserves? Our bodies deserve movement. Movement is life. Movement is all. So why aren't we addressing some of these secondary conditions with the things that are less invasive? Acupuncture, massage, chiropractic, physical therapy, all of these things that are proactive, preventative, don't have side effects, and really sustain and redefine how we're approaching Chanda's spinal cord injury for more of a healthcare model that's sustaining wellness and allowing disability and wellness to coexist.
And how did he respond? Because I'm imagining, because a lot of doctors respond negatively to that.
Yeah, well, I would say I was so proud of him because he looked at all of us and he just said, we have nothing to lose. We don't want to lose other than Chanda. So let's do that. Let's try it. And after having conversations with him later on in life, he said he always thanked me for opening his eyes because he felt that within the medical model, there's a very specific way that you're trained in that model. And oftentimes they don't always ask about these preventative components because sometimes, one, it depends on what the pressure is that's pushing that ask. But for this physician who really, I know, cares about the human more than the system, he was like, I oftentimes don't recommend those things because I don't know somebody's financial situation. Sure. Had I recommended that, because he did recommend, so after he goes, well, then how are you going to pay for that? And my family and I are like, we're just going to figure out a way to pay for it, right? There's no other alternative.
Thank you.
And so I think that might be why a lot of our systems and physicians don't recommend it because they don't know how somebody would pay for it, which we can get into how that can all change as well, because we've done some stuff here in Colorado to really eliminate that so that physicians can say, hey, with your spinal cord injury, go try this, this, and this.
Right.
Because guess what? It's covered by Medicaid now in Colorado.
There you go.
So we can get into some of those pieces.
Yes. Very important. I think you brought up a few important points. And one is, I mentioned that most physicians are not really open to alternative models. And so I'm a physician and I've done this for almost 30 years. And it was, he's right. We are trained on 1950s, ideas and old medications and biology technology. We are not trained on the newer ways of thinking, and we are also trained to keep a closed mind. We are told it's not straightforward, but it's very suggestive to keep a closed mind to alternative therapies, and so. Honestly, I'm a very caring physician, much like you're a family practice physician. And, I was open to things, but I just didn't know. I really just didn't know. I weren't trained that way. We were told not to, but I knew it wasn't right to entirely close my mind off to those things. But otherwise, I didn't know until I got sick. Or until I was faced with somebody who was ready to take on that challenge and interrupted me at some point and said, Dr. Pinkston, have you ever thought about this? Which not all physicians are open to, but I was. And so encompassing that, I'm glad yours was, because encompassing that, we can learn more. Doctors can learn more. If you are not getting what you need from your physician, ask for it. If you don't get what you need, then move on. You can fire your physician and find somebody who is better for you. Not that physicians are all bad. It's not that. It's just we don't know, and sometimes we're a little afraid, and it's hard to get that.
And I think creating a partnership, like I look at, I think that might be a new evolution or model of way of how we also look at who our physicians are to us. I look at them as a part of my team.
Yes.
And my physician today, she's like, I got you if you got me. Meaning like, I'm going to do all of these things, but there's going to be some things that I'm going to need your help to get there, because you can't expect me to do, and so it's like, and we teach our participants that a lot, where it's like, you can't ask for something and expect that the physician's going to snap their fingers and all of these great things are going to happen. It's called a partnership. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's another way, as we continue down medicine and the different kind of philosophies around it, I just truly see it as a partnership. And I think that when you have that partnership, you can have some pretty deep, vulnerable conversations. And if you can't, that means find a different physician.
Absolutely. And sometimes those limitations. And the second thing, a good point you brought up, was about affordability. Now, most of my patients, I practice a lot of integrative medicine, and a lot of things that I do, a lot of testing that I do is not covered by insurance. It's not even recognized by insurance as an alternative. And since I still take insurance at my clinic, most people do not want to pay for me my services out of pocket. It's not cheap. And so they rely on insurance. So I chose to stay in the insurance model world to access people who cannot pay out of pocket. And so if that's the case, then if you're a physician that takes insurance, you have to see 30 to 40 people a day to 5 days a week to make your, to meet your overhead, to pay your staff. No, I'm not a rich doctor. It doesn't work that way. I don't take home anything until I pay everybody else, and insurances limit that significantly. So in seeing 30 to 40 people a day, I can't spend 45 minutes with you. And that breaks, I do anyway, but it breaks my heart that doctors are up against that kind of a wall too. So just understand your doctor has limitations that they cannot always control. And again, they should be open and listen to you. And if they're not, then again, you should move on. But there are doctors who will do that. The affordability, you ride on the line of trying to get your insurance to cover things, which is not always in your favor. But sometimes you just have to pay out of pocket, and you just have to find it. You do. You just have to force yourself to find ways of doing it. And so that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. And I think the piece that I would add to that too is, that might be a lot of, because I think about, most of our participants are Medicaid, right? And so with Medicaid, I really push for value-based care, because there is a difference to serving individuals that don't have complex needs versus who do have complex needs, right? So underneath that value-based care, what we've been trying to advocate for is that for anyone that's going to be seen with a long-term support service need, like somebody with a long-term spinal cord injury or a severe complex issue that is really, really taking over their lives, that would be pushed into what's called this value-based care. And those physicians would get extra time and get paid for that extra time for that complex patient, as well of the payment associated to filling out all the paperwork that comes with that complex. I mean, my physician, she's my broker of my medicine. She's the broker of my DME equipment. Like she has to be that. And so with all of that complexity, there's very few physicians under Medicaid that even want to take us because we have that. So if we don't identify a ability to pay physicians with a value-based care, which includes more time and more pay for those things that we require, then of course it's never gonna, it'll just continue to be a vicious cycle of like, well, I could only see him for 15 minutes. So I guess I'm now going to go over to the emergency, because here in Colorado, we see folks use the emergency room under Medicaid more often than their physicians because of that lack of value-based care. And so we've been fighting a lot for that here in Colorado. And sorry, you and I could keep going. But I want to make sure that we could jump back to the
understood. And my bad, I pulled you away from that. But that's just
we're both so passionate. I can tell we're both so passionate, and it's a great conversation, right? Because we're pointing out all the things we need to, and then I just noticed, I'm like, oh goodness, we need to back up and talk about the center.
It's all good. So yes, and I do want to redirect back to taking care of, chronic pain and people with disabilities who are underserved. So tell us about your health center and what you guys do and provide.
Yeah. So, from that personal story that I just shared, and my family myself choosing to do all those integrative therapies and the dramatic shift that it had on my life, physically, mentally, emotionally, I got to a point where I was like, oh goodness, like this is not something that I'm willing to keep quiet. This is not something that I'm willing to let go by, because I saw so many of my peers in the same situation struggling. And so what I first did was there was two kind of like parallel things that I wanted to do. I wanted to approach legislation was one, because I was like, after I realized I was doing so well on all those preventative and proactive services of integrative care, I called up Medicaid here in Colorado. It was so funny. And I go, so I've been spending a lot of money, Medicaid dollars, by going to the ER and having all these tests done. But recently I've been doing this, and this. And I'm sure that you probably have seen that my claims have dropped significantly.
Wow.
And the woman on the phone had said, yes, we have actually. And I said, okay, so I would like to ask, instead of utilizing those dollars for the ER, can I utilize those dollars for preventative care? And she's like, well, that's not something that we cover. And I said, okay, well, and this is, I was in my 20s. So I was like, let me talk to your supervisor. And she goes, the way that we get that done is that we have to go through a legislative process to inquire that Medicaid pay for that. So that right away was the first thing that we did. In 2009, we presented a bill in order for Colorado Medicaid to cover acupuncture, massage, and chiropractic, and specific to people with spinal cord injuries in the Denver metro area.
Wow.
Today, we renewed that waiver. So in 2021, we renewed it to not only just be spinal cord, but MS, CP, spina bifida, brain injury, and to be the entire state of Colorado.
Wow.
So that coverage is now allowing all of those populations to get those covered preventative services and through providers that are Medicaid credentialed, right? And so that was the one parallel, right? And the reason why I wanted that systemic change was because while I was also creating the Chanda Center to wait for that legislative change to happen, knowing that people today and right now, as we do legislation, are in need of these services.
Yes.
So let's start a nonprofit. Let's start a clinic. Let's start the ability to use donor dollars to start supporting those individuals until we create systemic change.
Right.
The other thing around the systemic change was also that what if we went away? Like, what if something happened to where, I don't know, like we just couldn't be a provider, or something happened to us as an organization financially? We wanted to create that sustainability by ensuring the coverage was under Medicaid and not solely on our donor dollars or the Chanda Center.
Smart, yes.
And so from that, then we created a health center, and we got back to all of our constituents and all of our stakeholders and just said, we're giving you acupuncture, massage, and chiropractic, but what other needs do you have that are not being met? And that came back with this strong input on, competent physicians, primary care physicians that really understand our complex needs, and, care coordination, behavioral health, all of these things, and how they wanted it to be underneath one roof. And so we took on the challenge, and we created a health clinic that when you come in, it is so wheelchair and disability competent to the point where acupuncture, massage, chiropractic, physical therapy, care coordination, primary care, yoga, all of that is in our center underneath one roof and underneath a collaborative care model, with disability competence being the core to our mission.
Yes. Are you ready to go nationwide?
It's funny because we've been around for 20 years, and so I'm getting to a point. This is our 20th year anniversary, and so I'm kind of at a point where I want to get our current clinic. We're going to add on to it by adding, we're looking at maybe an adaptive gym or adding something like that. So we want our building to get really, really, really strong, full and sustainable with existing programs and new programs. Yeah. And that for us, I think, is what's going to feel really good, because we believe it should be national. We believe it should be a model.
A model for it.
Yeah, but to what extent do we have to do the work? We need to see other people start stepping up and replicating what we've done in their own places.
Yes. So we are putting out the call today for those.
Yay!
Here is Chanda. Here is the model of, of what it should be, because that's an amazing success story. It's very difficult to change legislative processes in states, and most people don't know Medicaid is a state, is funded by the state. Is put in place federally, but it's funded by each state. So each state has to take on its own challenges, and so you've done that in Colorado, which is amazing, showing that it can be done. And put a fantastic model in place. And so people hear the call. This needs to be done in other states. And there's your model right there. So congratulations. That's an absolutely amazing story. So,
well, I appreciate that. And I would say that, yes, legislation is hard, but I always tell people, I'm like, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Because I was in my 20s. I'm serious. I think the me being naive was probably a good piece of it, because I didn't really take no for an answer. I kind of asked a lot of questions. And so it's a lot, but it's doable. And I always want people to know that, because I promise you, there's nothing special about me that I've done to make that happen. Maybe it was the right alignment with the right people that could have been, and the timing. Because I also know right now, a lot of us, we're kind of fearful about what's happening with Medicaid overall. And so a lot of people are like, I don't want to take that call for action, knowing where is Medicaid even standing state by state right now? And so I think that we all just have to be patient and breathe and kind of figure out what it is that's going to happen with Medicaid overall.
Yes.
But still know that this is a model that is essential and critical to our communities.
Absolutely. And I see many times that when people take on, it's like Medicaid and Medicare are government entities, but they are typically kind of the base for what other insurance models do. So usually Medicaid, Medicare takes something on like this, and once they get it established and show success, then it seems like the Uniteds, the Blue Cross Blue Shields, and all those begin to pick this up and take heed and do these things as well. It's grassroots. Like you said, you mentioned kind of before we got on, you hate to think that you have to do all this from a grassroots. It's too bad. I'll ask the same question you asked that everybody else asks, and that is, why doesn't our government take on something like this and assist the public in it? And it's just, they've got too much on their plate, for sure. So it is a grassroots.
Because I think that, I don't know. There could be so many philosophies and theories around it, which you and I don't need to get into. But at the same time, I do think that I've always been baffled by, why aren't government programs looking at proactive and preventative services, because that's how we save money. But then, it leads me to believe, but what other money's coming in other ways that are not through funding through Medicare or Medicaid, but yet they're funding our government in other ways that then means that, no, we won't take on that, because if we take on that, we might be we might be jeopardizing whatever support these entities over. Yeah. So I again, it's just the whole, and I don't think that should discourage any of us from not doing it. Like I'm prepared because I think that we're just under the radar where nobody really knows, and then we're not getting, but as soon as maybe we get on the radar, like who knows, like who will be lobbying against us? I don't know. Like will those with pharmaceutical, will they lobby against us if we get too big? Like that's something to think about, right?
Something to think about, and I think they're good at instilling some fear underneath that to discourage it. But don't just don't believe above it. You can't worry about that. You just have to believe above it and keep going. I'm just gonna keep doing it, right. Even if the black sedans are circle. I know, right? Oh my God! Seriously.
Like, I know, I'm just joking.
No, you're not. That is legitimate. It is, and we all do that. Even doing an integrative, show, and I've done this for a long time. I was on a previous radio station for a long time, and now here, and the wagons are circled. It really does. The people can take some action against you, and the money and all underneath it. That's another good show for us to do. Actually, we kind of hit the 26-minute mark. I want to take a short break, and I'll put my commercial for my great sponsor, Magna Pharmaceuticals, in. But I want for people to know where they can reach you and find out more information about you and your fight and story. Tell us where we can find you.
Yes, I encourage people to check out our website. It's chandacenter.org, and it's a lot of great information, whether it's to learn as an individual with a disability, if it's somebody that wants to create a model like us, if it's somebody that's just really interested in being involved in some way, like that's where you're going to get all the information.
Yes, absolutely. And that will be on my website, the airing of the show. And so go to drpbetterlife.com. You can catch all my other shows, but you can catch this one, and plenty of information on Chanda and what she has done. So we are going to take a very short break and come back on the other side, because there is something I want to talk to you about and bring up. So we'll be back.
Depression, anxiety, low energy, weakness, these are just some symptoms of low B12 levels. And the absorbable B12 folate supplement that's helping people declare victory over depression symptoms is De Novo Plus B12 by Magna Pharmaceuticals. Patients with symptoms of depression often exhibit low levels of folate and vitamin B12. The human body needs sufficient folate intake to produce the essential neurotransmitters serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These neurotransmitters alleviate feelings of sadness, anxiety, and gloom. What makes De Novo Plus B12 so successful? De Novo Plus B12 contains readily absorbable folate and B12. That means it's more successful at correcting the root cause of your deficiency, not just the symptoms. Whether you are suffering with low energy, depression, fatigue, or anxiety, you owe it to yourself to learn more at magnaweb.com. That's magnaweb.com. Please let us know at checkout that you heard about De Novo Plus B12 on The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston.
Hey, welcome back. I'm glad to have everybody back. This is a fantastic show. Chanda, thank you. I'm so glad that you're here. We've been talking a lot about, the legislative changes that need to be made and all. We haven't spent much time on the actual disabilities. I think you really want to spend time on that, and I apologize.
No, you're fine.
I did have a question, though. I may lead us a little bit away again. I hope not. But about the opioid crisis and opioid management. Chronic pain is horrible. devastating. I mean, there's so many words that I could use, and I can do that personally because pain, it can take over your life in ways that you never thought. You can't take care of your children. You can't take care of your business. You can't take care of yourself. Meanwhile, you're trying to go and do as your doctor is asking you to do and provide. And some people found some benefit from opioids, and now it's gone. And now people cannot use opioids. And I think there's a happy middle ground, but we really went too far in what we allowed on the opioid side. So how can people find relief? What is out there for people? They need to know.
Yeah, no, I think that I'm an individual that definitely always usually falls within the balance of like you just expressed, and it gave an example of the extreme, right? There's too much of it, there's none of it, and then the middle ground is really what's essential, right?
Yep.
And so I see that's my philosophy for pretty much everything that I can think of. Yes. I mean, work-life balance. I mean, you think like anything, it's the balance, right? And so the hard part is that we all don't live in that same balance, right? And we find people pushing one end of the spectrum versus the other, whereas the consumer then has a difficult time finding that balance. Yes. And so what I feel has been really essential for myself and what I've seen for other folks with disabilities and chronic conditions is don't ever judge yourself for the need to utilize a particular narcotic or service or medicine that would help you with, any sort of severe level of pain that you need to get through. Well, I am all about using acupuncture, massage, chiropractic, physical therapy. I will do everything preventative that I need because all of those things help me with my pain, right? Moving my body is really beneficial. Blood circulation, lymphatic drainage, like it helps with my bowels. Like all of that stuff is really what helps us sustain that ability to feel well, feel healthy, and feel productive, right?
Absolutely.
And I even believe like the supplements, I mean, just from that commercial, like, yes, B12 and all of these things, right? It's really essential that we take the things that we need, knowing that at the end of the day, there could be isolated incidences where you're going to have to rely on something a little bit heavier.
Sure.
I just caution people that we don't rely on those heavy hitters
only.
Is like too much because then that turns into a vicious cycle where the secondary or the side effects of that can then sometimes be so complex that you're kind of fighting your pain with an opioid that then is causing all of these other things, right? And so, and knowing that opioid is, more difficult for people to access, I think there's still people can access it in appropriate ways, and then using integrative therapies. But I also have seen a couple other things that and other people might, completely roll their eyes about it. But I do think that, behavioral health and counseling opportunities are very essential when it comes to chronic pain, because I will say that I have a relationship with pain. I have a relationship with chronic pain, and that relationship has evolved over time. And I have to also remember what sometimes when I feel a certain pain, it's not even so much that the pain is bad. It's my anxiety about the pain getting beyond. And so it is, and I hate to get philosophical on it, but like pain is a very complex thing to understand.
Yep.
And I still think that we're all I've spoken with lots of people who, do research on pain and like we are still trying to understand it. And I think we just have to do what is best and meet in the middle, meet that balance as consumers as best as we can, because it's such an important question, but yet such a complex answer.
It really is.
Yeah. What would you say to that?
Well, I have, you see me nodding my head. I've lived with chronic pain for 18 years. And at first I was in the fight, to get rid of whatever it was that, I want to be pain free. And at some point I realized that I don't think that's going to happen. I'm like you. I didn't submit, but I'm like you. And I just thought I'm going to have to develop a relationship with this pain. It's here. So how are we going to live with this? Now, what you don't know maybe, and all my listeners do and have heard it too many times, but I was 300 pounds at one point after all of the steroids and the lack of exercise and being in bed and, the anxiety, as you say, and overeating and, turned into an eating disorder or stress eating and emotional eating and all those things. And at one point I just looked in the mirror and I'm like, no, stop. This is not me, and I'm going to have to live with this somehow. And my fantastic rheumatologist, who I'm still with, Dr. Wickersham, said that, why are you afraid to exercise? Well, I'll make it worse. I'll hurt more. It hurts to exercise. It hurts to get up and get around. And then I just don't want to make things worse. I don't want to get sicker. And he, implored me to understand that I'm not going to be sicker with exercise. I'm going to be better from an emotional aspect, from the physical aspect. The pain will be better. And there's a lot of supplements and alternative things that he uses as well and encouraged me on. Boy, was he ever right. Mm-hmm. I got my act together and lost almost 200 pounds. And I'm an avid I'm an avid exerciser. I mean, I've got guns. I can whip somebody. They're afraid of me in a dark alley. I love it. So it is, but it's something that I really channeled my thoughts and feelings and anxieties differently. It's like I killed one person, so to speak, and reinvented myself as a new person. Very much a process.
Depression, anxiety, low energy, weakness, these are just some symptoms of low B12 levels. And the absorbable B12 folate supplement that's helping people declare victory over depression symptoms is De Novo Plus B12 by Magna Pharmaceuticals. Patients with symptoms of depression often exhibit low levels of folate and vitamin B12. The human body needs sufficient folate intake to produce the essential neurotransmitters serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These neurotransmitters alleviate feelings of sadness, anxiety, and gloom. What makes De Novo Plus B12 so successful? De Novo Plus B12 contains readily absorbable folate and B12. That means it's more successful at correcting the root cause of your deficiency, not just the symptoms. Whether you are suffering with low energy, depression, fatigue, or anxiety, you owe it to yourself to learn more at magnaweb.com. That's magnaweb.com. Please let us know at checkout that you heard about De Novo Plus B12 on The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston.
So there's not just a shot, a pill or something, that I use to just wake up one day and lost this weight and got into better shape or whatnot. I'm much thinner. I'm avid exerciser, but I took on a different relationship with pain. I'm still in pain. It's not gone. It's not going away. Yeah. But I have a whole different outlook on it now and not dependent on meds and in the medical system. But I work with my doctor in the medical system, as you mentioned. Yes. And I do all these alternative things, and it works. People need to not shut their mind to this. You have to work at this. Nothing's going to change it for you. Nothing's going to fix it for you. You have to develop that mindset, sit down with it, develop a relationship with it, and fight it, and then live with it. And you're so right on. And I think you saying that also, just for listeners, it's kind of like, I think some people don't take the jump because I don't know if they ever get, like, you and I had to get in that mindset because we were into a place where we were like, we couldn't do it the same way anymore. Right. We had to, right? And so I also think that sometimes, I don't know if it's that breaking point that will happen for people. I don't know if it's the, because also I think about mentality, right? Like whether
we're in spaces where we get to be supported with that. Because I know that, growing up in a rural community in Nebraska, it's all about be
tough and get through
beer,
it, right?
Beer and meat and potatoes. And I'm just like, no, it's all about let's get outside in the sun and walk around the park and have a salad. And so it's like, so I also think about those components and how they lead into it. But like, I think that people need to take time to really investigate what that is and commit to it. And if they're not ready to commit to it, like, don't, because you're going to be like really, really get to a place where you're going to commit to it, because it's a lot of work, right?
Yes. You mentioned that you had to get to a really down, dark place before you were ready to meet it head on. And I had to too. Everything crashed completely. Life completely crashed. And I just had to get to the moment where I was like, okay, are you going to fight this or are you just going to die? Are you going
to give up? Yeah.
Really. And I know there's levels of toughness in people, but I think everybody's got it inside if they really want to live and want to do it. There is a way. And so I've lived it, you've lived it, you've made an industry of it now, which is absolutely beautiful. And I applaud you. Wow, what a story. What a story.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
So, yes, so we're putting the call out there, folks, for you to do this. And so we need that. So what, in some closing arguments or closing statements, not arguments, I sound like a lawyer, sorry.
Oh, that's awesome.
In our closing statements today, what is, if we've left out anything at all, a message or anything that you feel strongly about, what is that?
Yeah, I just think that I hope that anyone that's listened to this today can go away from it realizing that disability and wellness or disability chronic condition can absolutely coexist with wellness.
Yes.
We don't have to be one or the other. And I think that not only of those of us that are in those positions, but the people in the world around us, our physicians, our any of our healthcare relationship, those that we have relationships within the healthcare system, like just simply believing that wellness is still a part of us, because I think that so much of our training and so much of disability is that we think about it as being sick and being vulnerable and not powerful and not so much of that. So I would hope that these conversations have allowed people to see that that's not the truth, that I'm a woman with spinal cord injury and I live in wellness. Absolutely. Yeah. Do I have bad days of pain? Of course.
Sure.
But I get to lead, I get to exist with those two definitions. The other thing I would hope people could leave away from is that, if you are in the medical model and you are in desire to serve people with chronic conditions and long-term disabilities, is that reach out to us. We have some really amazing tools that allow you to be very disability competent that don't cost money. And then we have another layer of stuff that allows you to be even more disability competent if you have a budget, right? We believe that people should be able to go into any clinic and feel like they belong, that they're not there, that they don't get transferred to a treatment table. They don't get their annual exams. Like, we don't want our secondary conditions to only be the thing that we see you for. We want to know how we're doing on an annual basis, in addition to always addressing our secondary conditions. And, we have the right to get on a treatment table for services just like everyone else, and to get examined appropriately. And Absolutely. So, and that doesn't mean that none of us or all of us are doing anything wrong or right. It's truly just the evolution of healthcare, brave leadership in healthcare, and knowing that we can all do better and we can all do this in partnership together. So that's what I would leave with.
Wow. Very powerful. Oh, you've touched my heart today. Amazing. Thank you so much for being on.
And likewise, you've done so to me. So thank you.
Thank you. I feel that. That's awesome. So, all right. One more time. Where can people find you?
At the ChandaCenter.org.
ChandaCenter.org. That will be on the website and social media this when you guys air, or when you air. And so drpbetterlife.com, and you can find all great information there and past shows. I've been doing this for almost 3 years now, and I love it. So lots of great stuff. Thank you. And so I would love to have you on again. I think we've got about 10 shows out of this that we can do. So I'll invite you back, but I would love to have you. Thank you so much. It's been such an honor, and I hope everybody out there has a fantastic week.
You've been enjoying The Better Life with Dr. Mary Ann Pinkston. For more information, go to drpthebetterlife.com. That's drpthebetterlife.com. And listen next week for The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston.